One of the most often perpetuated myths about the Canadian military is that it is somehow woefully underfunded. The genesis for this false impression is the arbitrary yardstick used by many defense analysts to calculate budgets as a percentage of a nation's gross domestic product, or GDP. It is time to target what exact bang Canada is getting for its defense bucks. The magic number that was seized upon by the NATO alliance was that of 2% GDP to be spent on national defense. Canada happens to have the luxury of having a comparatively large GDP. As a result, we presently spend just 1.3% of our GDP on defense, despite the fact that in terms of actual dollars spent, we rank 6th among the 30 member states of the NATO alliance. It would also shock most Canadians to know that Canada ranks in the top 10% of countries in the world in terms of actual dollars spent on defense. Canada currently attempts to spend $26.5 billion a year, and that means that to meet the defense analyst measure of 2% of GDP, our defense budget would need to be in excess of $40 billion. That is a mind-blowing figure. One of the most vocal advocates of NATO members, including Canada, spending that magical 2% of GDP on defense was none other than former and possibly soon-to-be future President of the United States, Donald Trump.
They all made commitments, and they will be up to 2%.
He famously referred to those NATO members not meeting the 2% threshold as delinquent and freeloaders.
Where would you put Canada in that, as they're not...
Slightly delinquent, I'd say, Canada, but they'll be okay. I have confidence. Just slightly delinquent.
Missing from Trump's equation was the fact that countries like Greece and Latvia, who both spend more than the 2% on GDP, have relatively minuscule GDPs and as such can offer little capacity to the NATO alliance in terms of actual contribution.
The President knows well as well that Canada has been there for every NATO deployment. We have consistently stepped up.
Canada provided NATO with a full battle group during the decade-long occupation of Afghanistan. We provided combat trainers for the mission in Iraq and a forward-deployed battle group in Latvia since 2017 as part of Operation Reassurance. In other words, when one factors in actual capability and commitment, Canada could hardly be referred to as either delinquent or a freeloader.
Bonjour, bonjour. Bienvenue au Théâtre National de la Presse.
It is also true that in the past year, Canada has announced over $30 billion in new defense contracts. In addition to the $19 billion to purchase 88 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters from Lockheed Martin, on November 30th, the Liberal government also announced a sole source deal worth $8 billion to buy new surveillance aircraft from Boeing.
The P-8 Alpha Poseidon is the only currently available proven aircraft that meets all of the operational requirements as defined by the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Just before Christmas, the Liberals announced that Canada was buying $2.5 billion worth of Predator drones from General Atomics. As there is no point in having armed drone without arms, Canada also announced the purchase of $400 million worth of Hellfire missiles from Lockheed Martin. While these are large dollar figure acquisitions for the future of the Canadian Armed Forces, Canadians should realize that two of these weapon systems represent a drastic departure from Canada's historic posture of a peacekeeping nation. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter's main asset is its fifth-generation stealth capability.
The F-35 is nothing but a bomb truck. It's designed to be loaded up with weapons, scream in over the beaches on the first night of a war, and drop those bombs on cities or military targets and get out.
By its very definition, this is a day-one offensive weapon to be used to neutralize a peer or near-peer hostile state's air defenses. We are purchasing 88 of these fighter aircraft, and Canada has no plans to operate a mixed fleet. I, for one, cannot fathom a scenario wherein Canada would initiate a first strike against another country all on our own. This means that for the foreseeable future, our Air Force's combat asset is nothing more than a supplement to the U.S. Air Force. As for the purchase of 11 MQ-9 Reaper Predator drones armed with Hellfire missiles, this puts Canada on the slippery slope of making ourselves a deputy to the world's self-appointed policeman, the United States of America. The U.S. uses these hunter-killer drones to carry out extrajudicial execution of their enemies all over the world.
The United States successfully concluded an airstrike and they killed the emir of Al-Qaeda. Justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more.
These things are long-range, deadly killing machines, which again, I cannot foresee any scenario wherein we would employ these drones into any airspace without express permission from our southern cousins. Contrary to any sales pitch, the Reapers are not going to be used by the RCF to detect forest fires. Word to the wise. Those Canadian defense analysts calling for the 2% of GDP spending on defense receive the bulk of their funding from those same defense contractors benefiting from the additional expenditure. This has been On Target. I'm Scott Taylor.